The latest Resident Evil is a smash success, but some have noticed a slight disparity in how the mainstream Western gaming media is talking about its two main characters, as one might even say that they are being deeply sexist and outright goonerish over one of the two. Leon, of course. Now the reasons for this is rather obvious and well established in left-wing doctrine, and we're going to talk about that of course, but we're also going to talk about the deeper issue at hand here, as this isn't merely just the left being hypocritical, as make no mistake, this makes perfect sense within the left-wing way of viewing the world, but it actually has also to do with a deeper malaise upon Western society with how we view male sexuality and, more importantly, male romance. So, let's begin diving into it, shall we? With one of the most obvious examples, Resident Evil 4 no longer sexualizing its women. That is a good thing. Meanwhile, the same outlet, Leon has definitely still got it, as Resident Evil Requiem fans are already going feral over his biceps. Rightio then. And this is hardly the only one. In fact, you can go around the internet. Resident Evil Requiem sets series record on Steam, with a peak 260,000 fans here to spend time with hot Uncle Leon. Resident Evil's hot Uncle Leon is due to female developers. The thirst for Resident Evil Leon as Kennedy is out of control, says Polygon, a site that has spent a tremendous amount of time and energy over the years shaming you for being a sexist, evil gooner male. We've also got Kotaku coming in hot and heavy here as well. Leon Scott Kennedy, I'm on prep, with the following phrase, and I am sorry, but according to writer Kenneth Shepard, for me, this meant having Leon Kennedy on low health so I could hear all the pained grunting sounds he makes as he struggles to make his way through the environment for reasons. Again, make absolutely no mistake, the average left-winger is just as horny and just as depraved as any 13-year-old boy that has recently gotten his first copy of Tomb Raider. In fact, this is the precise same thing that became a meme in Tomb Raider, where you would back Lara up into a corner, push her up against the wall, and hear the little grunty noises. Is the precise same thing from, well, a website that also has taken a firm stance against sexism over the years. And to be clear as well, Resident Evil is a series with attractive characters, full stop. Women and men, and that is a good thing. That is the ideal. Preferably, I want a video game in which both men and women have a plethora of eye candy to look upon, because that just makes everybody happy. That's not how the left views it, however. So, let's get into the explanation from left-wing dogma here. Why is it okay to sexualize Leon, but not Ada Wong, for example? Well, Leon, you see, is a straight, hetero, white male. This means he has the maximum amount of power plus privilege that society can conceivably offer. Or, in translation, he is the oppressor, the evil villain, the white man, keeping everybody else down. And since the left-wing hierarchy is their perceived worldview, white men at the absolute very top, reversed, this means that he is the lowest class of people possibly imaginable. He, in essence, has absolutely no rights or privileges, and anything and everything you can, want to, or have the ability to do to him is not only permissible, but desirable. And so, watching him suffer, sexualizing him, harassing him, viewing him and doing to him everything that they have cried their eyes out over being the worst thing imaginable when it happens to women, all 100% okay, fully integral and coherent within left-wing doctrine. Leon Kennedy is a piece of meat to them. And the worst part is, this is what they accused everybody else of. This was the accusation levied against men in general, that they viewed women as nothing more than sex objects, as pieces of meat. And again, I refer you back to putting him in a corner grunting. Yeah, these people are in no position to throw rocks at anyone, but of course, seeing as the primary purpose of the doctrine of left wing is political power, they will nevertheless do so, as society seems to be unswervingly dedicated to creating an oppressor and an oppressed class. The left wing simply wants to oppress men, whereas we would prefer it if you didn't. But if you're gonna force us, oppressing the left wing is sounding like a very good idea. Better year by year, in fact. So, there is, however, a wider conversation to be had around this, and that is also the reaction, of a significant portion of the male audience. So, as mentioned, Resident Evil is a setting with several attractive characters, and somewhat similarities to Silent Hill, where certain of the entries were intended to be metaphors for sexual frustration, shall we say. Things like this happen as well. In fact, more often than I'm entirely comfortable with. And in fact, the entire thing of, like, banging monsters, and we're not talking monster girls here, we're not talking monster girl quests or anything, we are talking actual literal flesh-eating demons, etc. I genuinely do believe this is coming from a place of, well, repressed sexuality. So, imagine if you say that you were a feudal country, for example, that had been placed under the heel of repeated repressive feudal monarchs for a very long time, local warlords, for example. And if you tried to reach out for any non-sanctioned religion, say Christianity, you'd be boiled in a pot or hung on a cross. Well, that country was Japan. And that pretty much continued well up until the mid-1900s, when the Americans dropped two small suns on their heads. Suddenly, they were now a liberal democracy, more or less overnight, and that introduced with it a whole range of new freedoms that the Japanese people had basically never known, which led to an explosion in fascinating entertainment. In other words, sexual repression, as we've seen on multiple occasions throughout history, tends to lead to some pretty heavy-duty, erotica. And I do believe this is an element of that, because, well, female characters in video games today, Ada Wong is an extreme rarity. In fact, she largely belongs to the past and is seen in remasters, etc. Whereas modern-day female representation is things like this, 1348, X photos, absolutely, I don't even know really. Ugly, in a way, unappealing, definitely, studiously middle of the road. Yes, uglified by design, totally. Something you jerk off to, frankly, I see why you might want to try and screw the zombie instead, I genuinely do. But then it also comes to the question of why male romance things are also still continuously so looked down upon, as the only other form of female representation in gaming is, well, political. Literally, the strong female main character having taken over video games, and of course any representation of women need to be like this. You'd think the picture of a strong woman flexing her biceps would at least be being played with a woman, an observable woman, but no. So, I had the author of a fantastic little series called Trailer Park Elves on the Archcast, a month or two ago or so now? He writes a series called, again, Trailer Park Elves, a male romance series, a world of novels that I didn't even know existed until I randomly came across a picture of Trailer Park Elves on the internet and went, what? Well, that's a fascinating idea. Chat funded a read-through of it, so I did, and frankly, I adored it. So I got the other entries in the series as well, and what was most interesting is, I went into this assuming it would be, well, that it would be this, that it would be utter degeneracy from page 1 to page 213, nothing but the most vile and extraordinary sexism, if you will forgive the terminology, ever put to paper, but no. That was the weird thing. It had like one sex scene, I think, in the first book, possibly 2. That was it over the course of like 200 odd pages. Everything else was relationships and romance and build up towards the romantic relationship and appreciation of the male main character. Holy shit. That's not something I'd experienced since Mass Effect 1, which was swiftly taken care of in the sequel, obviously. So then, of course, later on, I also read another particular little series too. You know of which I speak, of course. Yeah, that one. Milking Farm. Female romance. Which chat has found very, very funny, if nothing else, and we're currently funding the 4th book in the series. Yes, there is a series of Milking Farm books. This is female romance, and if, for some mysterious reason, the book art is not enough to clue you in as to what's going on here, the thumbnail art drawn by White for our stream specials of it probably should. Everything I assumed to be true about male's romance, which turned out not to be true, was true. The female romance. The first book of Milking Farm has the mention of the word balls on every second page in the book. It vividly describes werewolf orgies. It devotes entire pages to describing cow penis and the seams of balls and a lot of ways of describing Choom that I'd not really thought of or ever really hoped I would have to think of, in fact. The word erotica is, in a way, fitting to describe it. Unrelenting, unflinching, unceasing, actual perversions. So, this then feeds back into this left-wing worldview, where we have something that is actually genuinely 98% a romance story, and this is vile, unacceptable societally. As society does not like male romance at all, it is a very stigmatized genre, and it is viewed as something that you definitely shouldn't indulge in. It's basically porn, right? Which, again, it isn't. I genuinely do believe that the increasing fervor with which many men view increasingly dangerous-looking entities, I do see the irony in these statements, I agree, has to do with this against sexual repression, which isn't merely just a left-wing thing, this is normal. The conservatives weren't particularly fond of this either. Male romance and male sexuality has been stigmatized for, God, a couple hundred years now? Unironically. And to be fair, female sexuality has been stigmatized for as long, if not indeed possibly even longer. So I absolutely understand the need for an outlet. But obviously, the problem becomes yet again when you implement the double standard, where women are again allowed societally so to goon to the most horrific shit you can ever imagine, including vivid descriptions of anal prolapse in the second book, Breeding Clinic, in case you were wondering. Yeah. And it's about exactly what you think too. It is literally a breeding clinic. This is a society constructed by a woman specifically with the intent of creating a world in which the concept of a werewolf breeding clinic is somehow not only acceptable, but just normal, casual, everyday stuff, really. Again, I'm not the kind to kink shame, and if you're into that, then good for you, but it does need to flow both ways, and for a while at least, and probably hopefully for the future as well, Resident Evil has been one of the few titles, primarily because it's not Western, that allows for this. And again, I would like for that to remain. I do not believe that the answer to this kind of nonsense, or this, is to remove Leon Kennedy, or to make him less sexy, or censoring him, or in any way turn turning him into what the left wing has turned all women characters into. There we go, there's the one. I don't want to do this to Leon Kennedy. I don't want to take away the schlicking fodder of the females. I would just like for both of us to be treated equally on this. That is, of course, far too much to ask for a politically conquered gaming industry, but hopefully, as the spectre of the left wing grows ever more distant in the rearview mirror, we might get at least a brief return to form. Well, there are certain complications in the way of that as well, especially if the Overton window swings far enough to the right. As I mentioned, male romance has tended to be stigmatized by both sides of politics for a very long time, but this also, oh god, we could even delve into a discussion of what this has to do with masculinity, how it fits in there, whether or not it's negative, damaging, or whether it is simply a natural and healthy part of being male. I heavily lean in on the latter portion, of course, but I guess we've ranted on for long enough as it is. So, yes, there is absolutely a double standard here. It is not accidental, they are not unaware of it, this is simply left-wing doctrine. It is 100% cohesive and coherent with their worldview, and it is not because they don't notice. It's because they view you as an oppressor class, which is why, paradoxically and so thoroughly left-wing in that it opposes itself on the very fundament of its ideas, why you don't matter, and why you do need to be used as a piece of meat for what I can only presume to be a very homosexual man's masturbatory enjoyment. Until next time, I've been Arch. Thank you all very much for watching. I hope to see you all again soon. Have a good day.